had the courage to speak about, you know, since the so-called vision of Dr. Bawumia was unveiled.
Okay.
I was particularly worried about his apparent overexcitement, which was visible from the very beginning of his address to the end. And his overexcitement, you know, was reflected in his body movements. It was reflected in his unwarranted laughter and so on, you know. And I was so very worried about him. You see, that kind of overexcitement, which is visible and so on, in some instances will call for medical examination. Something is wrong. And I'm hoping that psychoanalysts who watched him, clinical psychologists who watched him and so on, may want to advise. Because that overexcitement is not normal. Watch his body movements and so on. You understand? So I was particularly worried about that. And since then, I've insisted that he ought to be pitied rather than scorned. And I insist that this gentleman really deserves our pity. After listening to him and watching him, I'm beginning to think that we need to revise the English dictionary. Completely revise the English dictionary. Because there was nothing about a vision in what he presented. Essentially what he presented was a wish list. A wish list. And that wish list itself had not been properly crafted. To the extent that he ends up self-indicting and validating his opponents. And it was troubling. You understand? Now, why do I talk about validation of his opponents? Many of the things that Dr. Bawumia says that he's going to scrap are things that were introduced by his administration, which his opponents criticized, and his opponents were shouted down. So even the final analysis, he comes to admit that his opponents were right and he was wrong, or his government was wrong. Does that not amount to validation of his opponent's position? And indeed, let's take e-levy. Bawumia today is looking us in the face and saying that, look, if I become your president, I would abolish e-levy. Okay? He is realizing that today. Others realized it 2 years ago. So on the basis of e-levy, its propriety or its impropriety, who deserves your vote? The one who saw it later? The one who implemented the policy which was bad? Which has worsened the state of the national economy? Or the one who from the very beginning saw that there was a problem with e-levy? Who deserves your vote? This is clear. Clear as daylight. Now, there's also this aspect that must be exceedingly worrying. You understand? And Dr. Bawumia himself has described himself as an Aplanke. He has described himself as an assistant headmistress and so on. Now, my question is very simple. He was part of the team. He attended cabinet meetings. And I even suspect that at some times he presided over cabinet meetings. Okay. Now, these wrong policies Decisions were taken on these wrong policies for implementation. He didn't like the policies. Okay? From what he's saying today, he obviously didn't like the policies. So, Dr. Bawumia is telling us that he was defeated in cabinet. He was either defeated in cabinet or he didn't fight over these policies. Do you understand? Now, if he didn't fight over these policies, it raises substantial questions about his character, about his trustworthiness. That he sat in cabinet took decisions that he knew were wrong, which would damage the national economy. He kept quiet, he didn't fight, and those decisions were implemented. What a vice president. What a future president. Now, if he fought and was defeated, okay, it raises another issue of capacity. So it means that he sat in cabinet and couldn't convince his colleagues that what they were about to inflict on Ghana was wrong and unworkable. That's an issue of capacity. He didn't have the capacity. He didn't have the arguments. He didn't have the facts to convince his fellow cabinet members. My goodness. And he wants to be president? What a president he will be. I can't believe it. And he said all these things. Unexpected applause. Expected that all these things he had said would push the people of Ghana to make him president. Now, I've said this before and I'm going to repeat it. And I'm going to use his own, how do you call it? His own words. Not words, really. But listen. The man says that he's an Aplanke, the driver's mate. Aplanke, the driver's mate. Now, if you go to the F00ls station, the only skill the Aplanke has or displays, so, Abaka la pass, Abaka la pass, Abaka la pass. Everybody can do that. Anybody can do that. Just hang on to the door of the bus and be shouting, yes, Abaka la pass, Abaka la pass, Abaka la pass. The skills of the driver are much more. The driver has to have the capacity to anticipate. You understand? The driver really knows that all the 23 lives in the Mercedes-Benz bus, are in his hands and so on. The driver is a thoughtful person. The driver makes decisions and so on. So, for the last 7 years, all that Bawumia did was to be shouting, Abeka la pass, Abeka la pass, Abeka la pass. And he enjoyed all the perks just for shouting Abeka la pass. And that's how he sees himself. He sees himself just as an Aplanke. For 7 years he was an Aplanke shouting Abeka la pass. Can't believe it. But that's how Bawumia sees himself. In any case, and I've said this before, it's not new, I'm going to repeat it. All of us, 5 of us, we've joined a bus that is going to Insaum. A commercial bus going to Insaum. When we get to Caprice, the driver parks the car and says, I'm coming. Then he goes into a blue kiosk. He cuts 2 halves straight. I know that stuff is measured in quarters, halves, and fulls. Yes. So this driver, he cuts 2 halves straight away. And then on top of that, he takes an energy drink. And he's staggering towards the bus. The Aplanke knows that this is what the driver has done, his boss has done. The Aplanke doesn't protest. He doesn't alert the passengers. Nothing. He sits there. He says, oh, one day I'll be the driver. So I can forget this one. My brother, that bus would not get to Fanko. It will crash and kill the people in it. And if that bus does not get to Fanko, crashes and kills the people in it, are you telling me that the Aplanke is innocent and bears no responsibility for the accident? The Aplanke who kept quiet, who didn't complain, who just waited his turn to be the driver. What kind of an Aplanke is that? What kind of an Aplanke is that? But this is what Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia says that he is. I'm not saying that he is. He himself says that he's an Aplanke. Because I don't believe that he was an Aplanke. But if we are to take his words seriously, who would trust such an Aplanke? You see, it doesn't end there. Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia tells us that, look, a couple of months more, maybe 10 months more and so on, I will become president. Things are very bad now. My own government has imposed e-levy on you and we are suffering. Don't worry. Wait for another 10 months. When my boss is out of the way, I will take over and I will abolish your suffering e-levy. I can't believe it. I can't believe that he said that to us. Sana, can you believe that he said that to us? That we should continue suffering for 10 months. And that until he becomes president, e-levy will hang on our neck. Hey, this man, what does he think of himself? If e-levy is bad, if all the things he wants to ban are bad, why doesn't he speak now and ask for their removal now? Why should we wait for 10 months? Why? What have we done wrong? What have we done to Bawumia that he wants us to suffer for another 10 months? And then when he becomes president, he will then pity us. Now he has no pity for us. When he has become president, he will pity us and remove this burden which was placed on us with his blessing. I can't believe it. There's something else, and I'm not making this up. Anybody who has watched the presentation of budgets over the last 7 years cannot forget this image of Kenufuriata carrying his custom-made bag and being followed by Dr. Bawumia to Parliament House. Indeed, it is only in this administration that I've noticed that the Vice President religiously follows the Finance Minister to Parliament House. That symbolism, what was it meant to portray? Why has Bawumia been always following Kenufuriata to Parliament? Clearly, it's an endorsement, it's a statement of endorsement of the budget. Yeah. So if he didn't like what Kenufuriata was saying, or was going to say, why did he religiously follow him to Parliament House to present the budget that he disagreed with? Now, my brother, yesterday I watched a lot of videos. I mean, these days, everywhere you turn, the videos are imposed on you. You have to watch them. Especially if you watch Metro TV. Metro TV does a classic job of playing these videos. So they played a couple of State of the Nation addresses by His Excellency the President. You understand? And in all of the State of the Nation addresses, the President makes the point that his economic policy and its implementation largely lies on the shoulders of his vice president. And in one instance, the president praised Dr. Bawumia to the high heavens, called him smart and all of that. And then the cameras panned to Dr. Bawumia and he was so happy. He was so happy. He was laughing. He was giggling. He was shaking in his chair. My goodness. When the president praised him as the key manager of the economy, he was happy. He didn't protest. Now he was with president. He says, no, don't blame me. I was only the Aplanke. I was only the assistant headmistress. Sana, that's a school. Maybe a senior high school. And there's a headmistress. There's the assistant headmistress. And the headmistress notices that the food which is being served to the students is unwholesome. The students are eating unwholesome food. It will affect their health and so on. The assistant headmistress sits down and says, this headmistress is wicked. Look at the food being fed to the students. But in any case, I am not the headmistress yet. So wait. In 10 months' time when I become the headmistress, I would make sure that the children are not fed with poison anymore. What an assistant headmistress. What an irresponsible assistant headmistress that will be. And who, in his or her right senses, will make this assistant headmistress the headmistress. After displaying this irresponsibility, I can't believe it. Now, we should look at a few things. One of the promises that Dr. Bawumia makes is that he will run this country with the number of ministers substantially reduced. To how many? 50. Okay. That's very interesting. Again, there's a video of Dr. Bawumia sitting by his boss, in which the boss justifies the appointment of so many ministers and says, look, that tax is heavy. I can't do it alone. I need a lot more hands to be able to do the job. And Dr. Bawumia is nodding his head. Nodding his head. The job is heavy. You can't do it with 50 ministers. You need a lot more ministers to do it. He doesn't complain. He doesn't complain publicly. He doesn't complain privately. He goes along as vice president. Then John Dramani Mahama, former president, comes and says, look, this size of government is too much. We are broke. The economy is in the doldrums. We need to reduce the size of government. And therefore, if I'm given the mandate, I'll reduce the size of ministers to 60. Oh, Dr. Bawumia sees a chance to dribble John Mahama. So he comes and says, hey, the man says what? He says he will reduce it to 60. I will beat him. I'll reduce it to 50. This is undercut. Now, just imagine. The former President Mahama said that he will reduce the number of ministers to 30. What number would Bawumia have given? Just imagine that. Look, the people of Ghana, we are not stupid. The people of Ghana actually fought against British colonialism and defeated British colonialism. The people of Ghana have done many things before. The people of Ghana have demonstrated throughout our history that we are people capable of thinking and acting in our interest. Let nobody take us for fools. Don't worry. He says 60. So me, I come 50. If he says 40, I'll come 30. If he says 30, I'll come 20. Abba! What is this? And for me, what worries me is an inferred assumption that we can't see through this.
Yeah.
And if we can't see through this, then we are all yo-yos. Dr. Alhaji Timothy Mahmood Bawumia, His Excellency. We are not yo-yos.